The best of Money Matters. Right Business.
Welcome to The Right Business, where we dive deep into the stories of trailblazers who dare to disrupt the status quo, find the gap in the market to find the right business. Hello, I'm Hongbin Jeong. Singapore's F&B landscape is facing mounting pressure, with reports indicating that over 300 small businesses are shutting their doors each month in 2025. And it's a troubling trend that is sparking growing public concern. At the heart of the issue is the soaring cost of commercial rents, which many in the industry argue have reached unsustainable levels. One voice drawing attention to the crisis is former TV producer Greta Georges, who recently posted a viral TikTok video spotlighting the harsh realities faced by small F&B operators. In her video, Greta shared the plight of various business owners grappling with skyrocketing expenses, including a now-closed bakery, Floor Patisserie, which had operated for 13 years. Are rental prices getting too high, and should there be new legislation to curb prices? Well, today we'll find out from Zat Astha, editor-in-chief of The Peak, to paint a clearer picture of how rent inflation is shaping the F&B sector. Hi Zat, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you wrote an article about this crisis. What pushed you to write this article now?
Every day, every week, every month, we hear of so many businesses closing. And for some reason or another, we're acting like this isn't a crisis. So I wrote this because the silence is too deafening to bear and the numbers are too damning to ignore. So we have to realize that these closures, they are not just isolated incidents. They are, in fact, the logical outcome of a system that has been optimized for capital, not community. And what we're seeing isn't failure, it's functioning. And the scary part is that it is functioning exactly as designed. So I wrote this article at least in the hopes that it would be some sort of a wake-up call or at least a reckoning for change. Because if we don't call it a crisis, then we need to stop pretending that we care about small businesses to begin with.
Reports indicate that over 300 small businesses are shutting their doors each month in 2025. But how much of this can be attributed to rental pressures versus factors like labor shortages, changing consumer demands, or fierce competition, Zat?
So the fact is that all those factors, rental pressures versus labor, consumer shifts, competition, right, all these things are all interconnected. But the only difference with rent, the only thing that makes rent stand out is that rent is the immovable object. Look, labor shortages and changing demands are survivable if you can adapt. But no amount of innovation and creativity can outpace a 57% rent hike. When your landlord becomes your biggest competitor for survival, passion and agility isn't enough. What makes rent uniquely lethal as well is in its indifference. You can negotiate with a supplier, you can adjust to customers, but you can't bargain with a lease that just doubled overnight.
Now, what role do you believe that commercial landlords are playing in shaping Singapore's business ecosystem, especially for F&B operators?
Oh, landlords, the invisible architects of Singapore's retail soul. We like to think otherwise, but actually it's quite true. They are the ones who decide who survives. They are the ones who decide who can afford to dream. And in so doing, they are the ones who decide what neighborhoods look like. So for F&B, which runs on tight margins and a lot of emotional labor, this is quite devastating. Increasingly, landlords curate tenants based on capital, not contribution. So a soulless chain cafe is preferred over a heartfelt, community-led restaurant because the most important thing is that rent gets paid. It doesn't matter that anyone feels anything when they walk in. And that, for me, is a quiet cultural erosion that is hidden in plain sight.
So in your article, you wrote that landlords are no longer the service provider, they are the customer. How has this power dynamic shifted, and how does it affect small businesses' viability?
Because businesses aren't innovating for people anymore, they are optimizing for rent, right? So in today's logic, tenants serve landlords, not customers. And when the ultimate goal becomes about appeasing the landlord's bottom line, rather than building a sustainable relationship with a real community, the very premise of entrepreneurship is already corrupted. Viability then isn't about quality, it isn't about relevance, neither is it about value. It is about who can endure extraction the longest. And the fact is that most small businesses, they can't. They fall under the weight of a system where capital isn't just king, it is actually the god.
Now, many landlords now prefer leaving storefronts empty while waiting for higher paying tenants. Is that really a trend, and why?
I think it's completely rational, right? Given the situation where your only goal is profit. Vacant units signal potential upside in future rental income, whereas occupied units with community value but lower margins are considered dead weight. So in this worldview, right, a soulful, affordable tenant represents opportunity cost. That is the thing that I find so hard to accept. So this trend is the inevitable result of unregulated capitalism, where profit is maximized not by filling space, but by waiting for the highest bidder. In that kind of situation, in those dark, empty shops, right, community naturally dies, and they do it quietly without much protest.
Zat, your article also points out that even Michelin-starred restaurants, often seen as symbols of economic and cultural success, have closed. What does their failure signal to you about the state of entrepreneurship in Singapore?
The clearest indicator, right, is that skill recognition and reputation no longer guarantee survival. It in fact shows that rent, not quality, is the actual real arbiter of success. So we are living in Singapore, right, where even excellence is disposable if it is not paid at a premium. That tells every aspiring entrepreneur one thing. This is not a meritocracy by any name. It is in fact a marketplace where capital trumps the very artistic value of crafts.
Zat, you also argue that passion has been co-opted and hollowed out by capitalism. Was there ever a time when Singapore genuinely valued passion over profit, or was that always an illusion?
I mean, if it ever existed, right, it was fleeting, just like a beautiful accident, if I were to say so. Perhaps some cafes, bakeries, or gyms once felt like passion projects, but the truth is that they were always living on borrowed time. In a system that is so tightly wound around economic pragmatism, passion is only tolerated and celebrated when it can coexist with profitability. So, no, I don't think we were ever structurally valued passion. We romanticize it, we turn it into collateral, marketing collateral, but we never built a city for it.
So Zat, how does this all trickle down to us consumers as well?
I suppose that the most important and crucial thing is that we lose choice and we lose joy. We also lose that little feeling of stumbling into a little neighborhood place that feels like, this is perfect and it is made just for me. What we get instead are templated, soulless outlets optimized for scale and not spirit. But as consumers, right, we are taught to adapt, to be grateful for predictability, but slowly, without noticing, and this is what is most insidious, we forget what surprise, intimacy, and sincerity feels like. And that means that we have, in a way, become complicit. We have become the participants in the very system that erases the things we once claimed to truly love.
In 2001, Singapore's Control of Rent Act was repealed, marking a shift towards a free market approach for commercial property rentals. Now, this means rental rates are no longer regulated and instead we're left to the dynamics of the market. Do you think now is a good time for new legislation to counter market forces such as vacancy taxes and rental control?
I mean, for sure, especially if we are serious about change. So that is the caveat, if we are serious about change. I don't think so. A vacancy tax, right, is not the most radical thing. For me, it's common sense. It ensures that land doesn't sit idle in the name of speculation. Rental control is a bit more complex, but it is not impossible. Still, how I see it, right, is that all these are not silver bullets, but they are actually signs of political will, and is proof that we value vibrancy over vacancy. If we keep waiting and waiting for the market to self-correct, what we'll be left with is nothing but empty storefronts and a lot of excuses.
So, Zat, have you seen any successful models elsewhere where rental affordability and vibrant F&B culture coexist? What can Singapore learn from them?
I mean, Tokyo neighborhoods are a good example, right? They are diverse, they are decentralized, they are affordable enough for quirky independents to survive. Paris and Copenhagen also, they offer subsidies for cultural businesses and they enforce strict zoning laws. In Seoul has experimented with rent caps in historic districts. And I suppose what Singapore can learn, right, is that rent doesn't need to be a weapon. Cities that treat culture as infrastructure, not indulgence, create creates sufficient space for the unexpected, the beautiful, and the most importantly, the deeply, deeply human.
Now, some might say such solutions would distort the free market and deter investment. How would you respond to concerns that this could harm Singapore's economic competitiveness?
I mean, look, I'm not forcing anyone to make any change, right? Because my article is saying that this is the bait that we made and this is the bait that we have to lay in, right? It is a very difficult pill for people to swallow. But to answer your question, right, I will ask this. Competitive for who? If our competitiveness comes at the expense of soul, comes at the expense of creativity and social cohesion, then perhaps it's time to go back to the drawing board and question the metrics. A city optimized only for capital is efficient, it is very enticing for businesses, but it is empty. The thing is, right, true competitiveness should be about resilience, should be about diversity, livability. Singapore have long chased being the best place to do business, but we are dangerously close to becoming the worst place to dream. So that for me is not competitiveness, that's collapse in slow motion.
Zat, you also mentioned that true change would require a cultural reorientation. What would that reorientation look like in practical terms for the average Singaporean?
It means that we have to sit down and redefine success. When we value the cafe with heart over the chain with funding, supporting local even if it costs slightly more, expecting landlords to be stewards of culture, stewards of creativity, and not just collectors. And for the average Singaporeans, right, it's about recognizing that every spending choice is a vote for the kind of city we want. It's in the small everyday acts, I see it as that. But they build a culture. And this culture, right, is one where sustainability is not like a buzzword, but literally a baseline. And where community isn't a nice to have, but an actual necessity.
And finally, before we let you go here, what's your outlook on Singapore's economic future for small businesses? What do you envision Singapore's F&B landscape to look like in 10 years?
I mean, if nothing changes, Singapore's F&B landscape in 10 years will be sterile. It will be a showroom, a beautiful showroom of franchised sameness. Small businesses will become mythologized, like museums of a bygone era. So we will see small businesses and we feel like, oh, how strange. But if we course correct, even modestly, we could see the return of diversity, experimentation, and local character. Still, it all depends on whether we treat small businesses as economic ballast or cultural lifeblood. So the way I see it, right, my outlook would be cautiously grim, but we are still fighting for hope.
Some great insights from you there. Thank you so much, Zat, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
To read more about Zat's piece, All Hail the Landlord, head over to the Peak Magazine's website. That was Zat Astha, Editor-in-Chief of the Peak Singapore. This has been The Right Business with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.